Sweet or savory, these German-style stuffed soft pretzels and pretzel bites hit the spot for a hearty quick snack. I'll show you a variety of ways to stuff your favorite pretzel dough using everything from cheese to Nutella to mustard, along with peanut butter and jelly. The options are near endless. You gotta see these. To make soft pretzels, you begin with a simple and basic pretzel dough. You can use your favorite dough or my homemade German Bavarian style pretzel dough that you see here. It's linked in the description below this video. I'll teach you the many tricks and tips on how to actually roll, shape, and fill the dough. Let's get started by looking at good options for stuffing your pretzels. For your batch of pretzel dough, you can pick one filling or many fillings. Here are some options that I'll demonstrate in this video. You can stuff your pretzel dough with a variety of savory fillings like diced semi-firm to firm cheese such as mozzarella, not fresh because it's too wet, any version of cheddar like medium sharp or extra sharp, or Gruyere. Mustard is one of our favorites and goes very well with pretzels. For sweet versions, how about some chocolate chips, or Nutella, or any nut butter and or fruit jam. What makes pretzels taste different from regular bread is that they are dipped in an alkaline solution, which gives them that distinctive pretzel taste. A traditional pretzel alkaline solution is made of lye. I am not comfortable dealing with lye, and it's also difficult to find. So I choose to bake my baking soda to reach the near pH level of lye. If you have food grade lye and want to use that, then by all means go for it. If not, then this is how we make it with baking soda. You want to begin by preheating your oven at 350 degrees. You're going to line a small baking sheet with parchment paper, and we're going to add 45 grams, which is a quarter of a cup of baking soda, and you're just going to sprinkle it evenly into the pan. Baking soda has a pH of between 8 and 9. Lye solution has pH between anywhere from 11 to 14, so higher the less acidic it is. So we're gonna bake the baking soda because that raises the pH to near 11. We're gonna bake the baking soda for 1 hour. Remove the baking soda from the oven and then just set it aside until you need it in the recipe. You can bake and store the baking soda for weeks. Just put it in a covered container and just let it sit until you're ready to make your pretzels. We're gonna scoop our dough out onto an unfloured work surface. An unfloured work surface provides friction, making it easier to roll out and shape the dough. We're going to divide the dough into 10 equal pieces. You can eyeball the pieces or you can weigh them. And so my dough is 821 grams. That's going to equal to 82 grams per dough piece. Once you have all 10 of your dough pieces ready to be rolled out, then just set them aside, the ones you're not going to be working with first. We're just going to be working with one at a time. Now, because I added and took away dough in order to get the weight right, I have like pieces that are just sort of stuck on top. So what I like to do is just sort of cover them up and make it a smooth sort of a round ball to start with. So, we're talking about something like this. And then just do a quick little roll with one hand to get these the size of a sausage, like a bratwurst sausage, like so. So rolling the dough pieces into short logs first allows them to adjust that size before rolling them much thinner. You're going to place them on a pan and then cover them up. It's okay if they touch, just set them side by side. Cover them up with a towel so they don't develop any kind of a crusty top. And then continue rolling the remainders out. My last one is done. So let's take a look at all 10. And we're not gonna let these rise or anything. We're just gonna let them sit while we prepare our baking pans. Line 2 baking sheets with parchment paper and then set them aside. Go back to the first dough, remove it, keep your plate covered there. We're gonna keep our surface unfloured because friction just helps it. Now we're gonna roll the dough completely out to a 16-inch long rope. So just press down in the center with your hands and push out as you're pressing down. Take your rolling pin, start in the center, and then just push out toward one end. Go back to the center with your rolling pin and then push out to the other end. So this is how we're making the filled pretzels. We need a place on which to lay the filling. So this is where you could use the flour if your rolling pin is sticking. And so basically we're just going to roll this, flatten the center out to 2 inches. We're gonna start with stuffing these with cheese. So you should dice all of your cheese in about 1/4 inch pieces. Small pieces are needed to allow you to shape the dough. So I have Gruyere, mozzarella, sharp, and extra sharp. The extra sharp's a little darker. I'm going to add a little bit of flour to each of my cheeses because the flour is going to help coat some of that liquid, the grease that's in it, that will keep it from hopefully melting too much as it's in the oven baking. And then just toss your cheese with the flour. Okay, I think we're going to start with our Gruyere since that's what I have in my hand. Now place the diced cheese about 1 inch from the edge because we're going to fold it over here, and then just make a line all the way down with your cheese. I have tried making these with strip cheese, you know, just cutting into strips, but the dough is not flexible enough to twist. It's a little extra step, but it's a lot easier and you're not going to have a funky looking shaped pretzel. Then we're going to take the end, start at one end, fold it up and over what cheese you have there on the edge, and then press down to seal the edges. You're going to do the same thing on this side, up and over, sealing the ends there. Press down the cheese a little bit so that it sticks sort of into the dough, and then just fold up the dough ends over the cheese, both ends, and notice how I'm pressing to seal the dough at the top. So now this cheese is encased in the dough. Let's give it a good pinch and a good seal. If you have any weakness, then you're gonna have some cheese leaking out, which is not a bad thing. You can just scoop the cheese up and put it on top of the pretzel once it's baked. So don't worry if it leaks. Sometimes they leak, sometimes they don't. So could be technique, could be amount of cheese that you put in here. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Could be just the weakness of the dough that we have. Okay, so notice how, look at that. Everything's encased. If you want, you could do a little bit of a rollover so that you can seal that crease a little bit more, but be careful because you don't want to weaken the exterior of it. You want to keep the sealed portion face up. I found that makes it a little bit easier and less leaking occurs because with it face up, the cheese is going to melt down. These are going to be fat pretzels. Okay, so shape in a U, twist the top ends 2 times, like so, and then fold down to where they touch the bottom and just manipulate the dough so that it's sort of it's in that pretzel shape, but you're not going to really have many holes there. And you can just press down to flatten it out, sort of like that. So that's a simple stuffed pretzel. Place them on a cookie sheet, cover them with a towel so they don't dry out. Okay, this is the extra sharp cheese. Just press it in, fold the ends over and seal, and then pull up both long edges and seal at the top. With the seam facing up, shape your rope into a U, cross both ends twice, okay, seal, just keep sealing if they start to pull apart. Turn the ends down to the base of the U and then just seal like that. Thick pretzel. For the chocolate chip stuffed pretzel, we're gonna follow the same procedure as the cheese, except we're not dusting our chocolate chips in flour. So now you're just gonna line up your chocolate chips side by side. I'm just using regular size here. I'm not using minis. I guess you could use minis if you want. All the way down. Okay, fold over the ends, seal. Fold up the long edges and seal. If you find that your dough isn't sealing very well, you can always just very lightly damp your fingers in a little bit of water, and that should take care of it. If it's too wet, it's not going to seal, so it just needs to be very, 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 very lightly dampened. And then again, to make the regular pretzel, you're going to shape it into a U, cross twice, and then fold down to the center of the U. You can manipulate the dough, stretch it out a little bit to make sure that you can get it down into the U, and then you can just press it to flatten it a bit. Again, thick pretzels, and place it on your baking sheet. For our condiments, we're gonna use spicy brown mustard, peanut butter, jam, and this is a homemade Nutella. I have the recipe linked in the description, or you could use store-bought Nutella. So these are for all condiments. You're going to follow this method. You can roll this one out just a little bit longer. You can go closer to an 18 to 20. So take a knife. Now mustard is very strong and peanut butter is also very strong. Just add a thin strip of mustard all the way down in the center, as close as you can to the center. Even though this is a squeeze bottle, the squeeze tip puts out way too much mustard, I have found. It's not as strong if you use a knife and manually put it on yourself. Now we're just going to fold up the ends gently, just enough to cover the end, and then go back and seal the tops. Now you can see why it's important to put the mustard in the center. If it gets too far to the edge, then it's going to dampen the edges and it might be a little bit harder to close up those long edges there. And that's our mustard pretzel. Okay, we're going to do one with peanut butter and jelly. You can not put jelly if you don't want, just do a thin strip. Peanut butter is also a very strong flavor, so I don't like to put too much on here. So just a thin strip all the way down. I'm going to go back and add a little bit of jam on top of the peanut butter. You can use whatever jam or whatever nut butter that you want. For the Nutella, it's the same thing. Just a nice spreadable line all the way down. So this is my homemade Nutella alternative. It's hazelnuts and powdered sugar and some oil. It's a good alternative to the store-bought Nutella that usually has lots of other ingredients in it. This is a very simple but good version. Okay, just as we've done before, just fold over the edges and press down. Edges and press down. The thicker the edges, the thicker the middle is going to be when you make the pretzel. So just keep that in mind. All right, and then fold up the long edges to seal. Okay, I'm sealing up the end of my Nutella version there. If you get anything leaking out, keep a paper towel nearby. I just told you might have put probably too much filling in there. I think I got a little happy with my peanut butter. Just crease side up, cross twice, and then fold down to make your pretzel. For stuffed pretzel bites, you're going to follow pretty much the same routine. Roll out your dough a little bit longer, about 20 inches in length, 2 to 2.5 inches in width, and then we're going to add all the same fillings, except for it's just going to be a few pieces of everything at a time. So leave about a 1/2 inch from the end. You can place like 3 little small pieces of cheese, and I'm going to use a little bit of everything, so that's my Gruyere. We'll do a strip of mozzarella here. You want to have about 1 inch between each filling pieces here. Should be able to get about anywhere from 8 to 10 little pretzel bites out of each strip of dough. Fold up those ends. Then you're just going to lift up the edges and crease them at the top between each of our fillings. You're going to flatten it out so that we know where to make the cuts. So that's one filling. Okay, I've flattened it out. There's a second filling. Seal it, flatten it out with my finger. There's a third filling. So between the 3 and the 4 here, after you seal it really well, flatten it out. You're going to do that all the way down. I like to do it as I go because once you get to the creams, they're harder to see. They're not as bumpy. For all the places that you've placed those creases, now you're just going to go back and cut in the middle of the crease to make your pretzel bite into pieces. Okay, I have some that are a little bit bigger than others. And then just go back and seal those ends again to where you have just a little piece of dough. You want to place them seal side down on the cookie sheet so they don't split in the oven. For all of your pretzels and pretzel bites, you want to place them in the freezer. For the cheese pretzels, I have all of my cheese pretzels on this baking sheet. They need to sit in the freezer for 2 hours to ensure that they are nice and frozen. So these non-cheese ones, we're just going to put in the freezer for 30 minutes. Regardless of how you filled your pretzels, dipping and baking are the same. So go ahead and preheat your oven to 450 degrees. For the dipping solution, we're going to add the baked baking soda to a largemouth bowl or stock pot, and that's 45 grams, a quarter of a cup. And to that, we're going to pour in 4 cups of cold water. And then we're just going to stir this until all the baking soda has dissolved. Once the baking soda is dissolved, the water should be clear. Once your water is clear, then remove one of your baking sheets from the freezer, whichever one that you're going to cook first. Remember, the cheese needs to be in there for 2 hours. The others can be in there for 30 minutes. Okay, this one's actually my cheese one. Okay, so you want to take 1 pretzel. Notice how easy it is to manipulate because it's been frozen. You could do 2 at a time if you wanted to. You could place them in the solution, and they need to sit in there for 30 seconds. When the 30 seconds are up, flip them over. I don't want to touch the liquid because it's in a high alkaline solution, so I'm going to be using one utensil to flip them over for another 30 seconds. Then you're just going to remove them from the liquid. Again, when they're frozen, notice how easily we can strain them. Get that liquid off, and then just place them back in their spot on the paper. Okay. And then you're going to add your next 1 or 2 for 30 seconds. Okay, while those are soaking, and I'm going to use some coarse salt along with some flake sea salt and just sprinkle it over the top. I like the flake sea salt, it just looks pretty. Okay, and flip that batch of 2 over, 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to remove this batch. Okay, now I'm going to add, these are our cheese pretzel bites. I'm going to add all of those. And we're just going to put those in for a minute. We're going to lift these out the same way we did the others, letting the liquid drain and maintaining that seal on the bottom. Okay, go ahead and add your salt if you choose. If you don't want the extra salt because of the filling, then you don't have to put it on there. We're going to continue dipping the other pretzels, and we're going to go ahead and bake this batch here. We're going to put them in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes until dark brown. And I do prefer to bake one at a time to ensure an even bake and brown. So as this one bakes, then we'll prepare the other one. While these are sweet, you could put cinnamon and sugar on top instead of salt. It's whatever you want to top your pretzels with. One pretzel batch is out, the other one is in the oven. We're going to let them cool for a few minutes, but you can eat them and enjoy them fairly quickly. I always have a little bit of leaking with my cheese. This one really didn't leak at all. There's a little bit of cheese melty there, but not much. Notice how high they rose. This one we definitely have some, but you know what? You could just break off what little cheese leaked, and then you have pretty much almost a perfect looking pretzel. But notice how brown they are top and bottom. So this is what the alkaline solution does. Now the difference between this and lye is maybe a little bit of the flavor, but also if you use the lye solution, these are going to be a little bit shinier. They're not really that shiny with the baking soda alkaline. Now for the pretzel bites, just peel off any crunchy cheese there. You could eat that if you wanted. And then of course, look, they're just like great little mini pretzels. Our last batch, pretzels are out of the oven. Now 5 minutes before this batch ended, I went ahead and took off the pretzel bites because I didn't want them to be super dark. So these would cook about 5 minutes left. So 20 minutes for pretzel bites. And then I baked 25 minutes of the regular pretzels. With such a variety of pretzels here, I'm not exactly sure what's in all of these, but we'll cut into a couple of them. So let's start with, this one looks like a cheddar one, so we'll go with a savory one first. Little cheddar out at the bottom. We're going to cut in the center. Let's see what we end up with. Notice that crunchy exterior, soft, chewy interior. Look at the cheese. We've got a little bit of void from where the cheese melted, but there's cheese all throughout. I like the cheddar because it's a very good color contrast between that and the white bread. The bread is soft and chewy thanks to the high gluten bread flour. So let's see what it looks like on the inside. Oh yeah, so this is the Nutella one. You'll get plenty of bites of chocolate throughout. Soft bread, you can see that squishes. So you get the crunchy exterior with a soft interior and fun flavoring. Oh yeah, crunchy, crunchy exterior. The cheese is there, but that's the white cheese. So you can see the void, and the cheese itself is actually on the inside edge of the bread. Crunchy exterior again. Look at that chocolate interior. Okay, it did not melt, so it did not have a void to leave, but you've got that, looks like a good balance of the crunchy exterior, the soft bread on the inside, with a chunk of chocolate in the middle. For these filled pretzels, store sealed in a bag or container at room temperature for up to 3 days. For longer storage, place in a sealed bag or container in the freezer for several months. Remove as desired and heat in the microwave until heated through. These stuffed pretzels are fun and versatile to make. So much so, you can please most everybody in your family. They make great savory and sweet treats, depending on your craving. Thanks for watching, liking, and subscribing. Until next time, go bake the world.